It's a must-win game for the Indianapolis Colts this weekend as they take on the Denver Broncos in a matchup that could determine the seventh seed in the AFC. Can Anthony Richardson conquer the Broncos defense? And will the Colts have an answer for Bo Nix? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, it is a must-win for the Colts. We talked about it on Monday night, went through all the playoff scenarios. If the Colts lose this game to the Denver Broncos on Sunday, it's going to be very, very tough for them to make the playoffs. And honestly, it might be the final nail in the coffin for the 2024 Colts.
Yeah, that's why it's so awesome. That's why this is such a great game, because while it's kind of nerve-wracking if you're a Colts fan, it's also pretty great that Anthony Richardson gets to travel to a place like Mile High and have a game like this, with the altitude and so many things that are going to pose pieces of adversity for him. It's good for Shane Steichen. It's a hell of a challenge. It's going to be an uphill battle. There's a reason they're underdogs, but hey, the Colts are a talented team. They have a lot to play for in this game. So do the Broncos, but I think that the Colts have far more to lose if they don't get the dub.
Oh, certainly. And as we dive into this matchup here, we're going to see that really the Colts are going to have to play close to a perfect game on Sunday. Just because of the matchups, because of what's at stake, what the Broncos are good at, what the Colts are good at, or what the Colts struggle with. It's going to be a very interesting chess match, not only on the field, but off the field as well, between these two coaching staffs. Let's take a look at the chat. Yim is here. What's up to you, my good friend, NFL nerd as well. Sean Payton versus Gus Bradley, Shane Steichen versus Vance Joseph. Not feeling good about those coaching matchups. So we'll talk about obviously each side of the ball. We'll talk about the offense of the Colts versus the defense of the Broncos, and vice versa. Give you all of our thoughts on each one of these matchups. Stats Matt saying, "What's up, boy? On paper, this is a tough matchup. Hopefully, the bye gave the Colts some clues." And if you guys have read my pieces over the past couple of days, you know that Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson, neither one of those guys really used the bye week as a bye week. Both of those guys were preparing and looking into the Broncos really from the very beginning of last week on through. So they know what's at stake at this game. And I think the entire Colts organization knows what's at stake for this game as well. So as everyone comes in here to the chat tonight, be sure you're following us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and make sure you subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications so you know when Drake and I go live every single episode. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, let's dive in. The Colts 4-point underdogs heading into this matchup at Empower Field at Mile High. Over under set at 44. So not the highest scoring game Vegas is predicting here. As we'll see, the Broncos have one of the best scoring defenses in the entire NFL. But as we always say, it's all about Anthony Richardson. And of course, that's who we're going to start out with. Drake, we're coming into this matchup, the Broncos, about middle of the pack in terms of yards allowed through the air, 221 yards allowed per game. However, the last time that the Broncos were on the field, Drake, was against the Cleveland Browns. And what did they do? They gave up 497 yards passing and 4 touchdowns to Jameis Winston. So there's definitely areas that you can exploit this Broncos pass defense. So when you look at this matchup, obviously all eyes are going to be on Anthony Richardson and what he can do through the air. Do you think that because of what the Broncos were able to give up against Jameis Winston, do you think that Anthony Richardson has the chance to have a really big game on Sunday through the air?
I think that, given the weapons that Richardson has, I think Josh Downs looks like he's on track to play, even if it's in a limited capacity. You have your quick win guy, then you've got Pittman, who kind of does it all. Then you've got Pierce, who's more of the over-the-top guy, and we're still kind of finding out what A.D. Mitchell is. But I also do think that while he doesn't have the skill set Richardson has, Winston's been in the league longer. Okay, he's more of that pure passer. I know that sometimes, he hands out pick sixes on silver platters, but I do have to say that I think that when you're comparing these offenses, and like what the Colts can do to the Broncos as opposed to what the Browns did to the Broncos. Jerry Jeudy also had, I don't know if this is fact, but I would assume it's his best career game, against his former team. And so a lot of big plays were made. So there are areas to attack, especially like I mentioned in our, I don't know if it was maybe it was on our Monday episode. I briefly mentioned, Alec Pierce could be a guy that could make some big plays for the Colts against this Broncos team, because he's just such an absolute mismatch for so many defenders one-on-one. So maybe he's a guy that makes some plays, but I think that comparing those two, you're talking about a guy who's been in the league a long time as opposed to Richardson. But hey, the possibilities are there, especially given guys like Jonathan Taylor, okay, guys like Alec Pierce, guys like Richardson. I mean, there's a lot of explosive elements on that offense that can make a defense pay if you're not ready, and that includes the Broncos. So.
Yeah, I would agree. There's going to be opportunities there, I think, but the Colts have to take advantage. That's the big thing. Are the Colts going to be able to execute in those key moments? And that's not just on Richardson. I mean, that's on the tight ends to not drop the football. It's on the offensive line to execute their blocks. It's on the wide receivers to catch the football as well, because we saw A.D. Mitchell drop sub. They can't have those careless drops. The execution has to be at an all-time high, and I think that's why you saw Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson starting their prep well in advance. The entire team needs to be at that same level. But Drake, as we look at these stats tonight, Stats Matt gave me a preview before the show. We're not going to see very many good stats in the Colts' favor tonight. And here's the first one from Stats Matt, our Stats Matt stat of the day, number 1, presented by Busch Light. Broncos have the best pass defense efficiency in the entire NFL, the 4th best run defense efficiency, and the 2nd best pressure rate. On the flip side, the Colts offense is 24th in passing efficiency, 15th in rushing efficiency, and 27th in pressure rate. So right there, just not looking good. Again, the Broncos defense, the best in the pass defense efficiency. A lot of that goes to Patrick Surtain, but they have other guys in that secondary. Obviously, Riley Moss. I don't know. Riley Moss is still up in the air whether he's going to play on Sunday. At this point, it doesn't seem likely that he's going to play, but if not, then the defense is definitely more susceptible to those big plays through the air. But what I'm looking at, Drake, is right there, that 2nd best pressure rate. We know that the Colts offensive line, especially in pass protection, hasn't been the best at limiting pressure on Richardson. Now, the sack numbers certainly don't reflect that, because Anthony Richardson is so good at getting out of sacks, but we have seen that when Anthony Richardson is under pressure, he certainly isn't performing at his peak. So I think in order for Anthony Richardson to have a big game, it's going to be on the offensive line. The offensive line have to keep him upright. I think Shane Steichen has to do enough to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands fairly quickly as well. You can't ask that offensive line to block for 3.5, 4 seconds on longer developing plays. Sure, you're going to want to take your shots. You're not just going to try everything quick and everything close to the line of scrimmage. But I think, again, to get Anthony Richardson in that rhythm and to back off that pass rush a little bit, you need to do what other teams do to the Indianapolis Colts, and that's really try to establish the quick game early. So I think that's one way that the Colts can attack this Broncos defense. Try to establish that quick game early, and then you can start taking your shots over the top. Obviously, mixing the quarterback run game, mix in Jonathan Taylor, who we'll talk about next. But I think being able to kind of make the Broncos pass rush, dial it back a little bit and not get going from the jump, I think that's going to be crucial in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys with 5 or more sacks. Okay, I mean, they're getting it done from a lot of different areas. So, like you said, the ground game obviously is fantastic to alleviate a pass rush, but it's really that quick pass game. It's really, RPO screens, just something to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly. And like you said, you could use some of the game tape for what the Colts defense has been allowing other teams to do as maybe a blueprint for what you want to do to the Broncos defense to alleviate that pressure for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and here's another stat, just in particular about Anthony Richardson, Drake. Another one from Stats Matt. Anthony Richardson has the sixth highest rate at targeting in breaking routes at
Hmm.
34.4% of his targets. He averages 13.9 yards per attempt, which is highest in the NFL, with the 10th best yards gained per attempt at 9.6. However, the Broncos force a tight window throw, which is 1 yard or less of separation on 25% of their in breaking routes, which is second best in the NFL, and has allowed the 10th
Dang.
lowest passer rating at 62.9%. So Drake, that's almost strength on strength right there. Anthony Richardson loves those in breaking routes from his wide receivers, from his tight ends, but the Broncos are very good at forcing incompletions and making those throws difficult. What does that tell me? That tells me that the Colts might need to break some tendencies a little bit, and that might be a good thing. Coming off of the bye, the Colts have a chance to self scout a little bit, and that could be an area where Shane Steichen calls for some more outbreaking routes. Certainly with guys that can create that separation on the outside, like an AD Mitchell by chance. However, it seems like on those outbreaking routes we've seen, those are the times where Anthony Richardson can kind of sail the football a little bit. You see predominantly that's when it happens. So if that's the case and they are going to switch things up in that area, Anthony Richardson really needs to be on target. If not, and they do continue to stick with what has been working best with Anthony Richardson, you need Michael Pittman to catch those footballs, get that body in there. You need Josh Downs to create that separation. You need AD Mitchell to create that separation and catch the football. That's where it's going to be key. Because if the Broncos take that away and Anthony Richardson struggles at hitting guys on their outbreaking routes and on the outside, could be a long day for this offense.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that they might have to break tendencies. And again, that's why this is such an interesting matchup, because just like Stats Matt provided, which, by the way, brilliant work once again from the third host of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Richardson is a young quarterback who is, we can agree, still in the developmental stage. He's probably going to try to lean on that at times. It might take a batted away pass, or it might take a pass that sails a little bit for him to get into rhythm. I would assume he's going to still try to hit those in breaking routes, at least to some extent. He's got the arm to really make up for a lot of that good coverage if he can hit it on the dot. That's the big thing that we've been talking about with some of these throws, is can Richardson hit them? But it's also on guys like Kylan Grant and guys like AD Mitchell, like you mentioned. You cannot have a repeat of the New England Patriots performance where you had big plays get dropped where it could have set you up in potential scoring situations if they're just caught.
Exactly. So when you take all this into account, I know the stats don't reflect it, Drake, but I do think that Anthony Richardson is going to have some opportunities to have success through the air. Patrick Surtain can't cover everybody, and especially if the Colts can get into the right looks, we've seen that Anthony Richardson can execute. Now, the only thing is he going to get the support needed to execute? You can't have a 9 route by AD Mitchell where he's able to get open, Richardson drops it in the bucket, and Mitchell drops it. Or have Kylan Granson down the seam where he's wide open and Richardson layers it over to him and it goes right between his arms, like we saw on the final drive against the Patriots. He's got to get help from his receivers as well. When those opportunities arise, they've got to catch the football. They've got to bring it down. They've got to convert. And if that does happen, then I think we can see Anthony Richardson box score wise have a really big game. We haven't even talked about his ability on the ground, and I think he can still have success in the quarterback run game as well. But in particular through the air, I think there's going to be opportunities. The Colts just have to execute on it, both quarterback and receiver.
Yeah, and if Anthony Richardson can get into some kind of rhythm, especially with the short passing game, he's already good at avoiding sacks, when the line's falling apart in front of him. So if he gets a consistent game going where the pass rush kind of, dials back a little bit, or if he can get some quarterback runs in, mix in with that, man, that'd be a beautiful scenario, because then he's kind of dictating with his athleticism and with his arm what the defense is going to do, and they're kind of reacting to him. So.
Yeah, and I think in order to do that, and so the defense isn't just keying in on the pass, we need to see a repeat performance out of Jonathan Taylor from against the Patriots. Now, it's going to be much more difficult to do that as well, because the Broncos are sixth in the NFL against the run, only allowing 94.7 yards per game. And the Broncos also have the second highest scoring defense at only 18 yards per game. And then just kind of just goes into the theme for the entire offense. The Colts are going to need to protect the football because the Broncos are eighth in the NFL in turnovers force, actually tied with the Indianapolis Colts for eighth in the NFL. So, but when you're looking at Jonathan Taylor and this offensive line, Drake, they're going to be facing pretty much their toughest. They're facing a really tough test, potentially their toughest test all season. Another stat that this doesn't necessarily reflect the run game, but Stats Matt has talked about Zach Allen, the defensive tackle for the Denver Broncos, leads all of defensive tackles with 49 pressures. So he can certainly get after the quarterback, but he can also penetrate in the backfield on those running plays too, Drake. So Jonathan Taylor coming off of a game where he had over 100 yards from scrimmage against the Patriots, 95 yards on the ground, and his yards per carry average was actually pretty decent until that final drive where he couldn't really get anything going. So Drake, when again you look at all of these numbers, and it's going to be tough for Jonathan Taylor in the offensive line to make some hay, but how important is it for Jonathan Taylor and this offensive line, which could be getting Ryan Kelly back? They could have they'll have, Bernard Ryman's going to be out there, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly is trending to play, Mark Lewinsky is probably going to start out at right guard, and Braden Smith is not going to be playing. We know that already due to that personal matter, so it's going to be Matt Gonzalez again at right tackle. But how important do you think it's going to be for Jonathan Taylor and this offensive line to get going on Sunday against the Broncos? Or do you think the Colts can still have success if these two units don't have their best game?
I mean, I guess if they don't have their best game, you could still have some success because the Broncos' pass defense is susceptible, right? But they're not good at pass defense, but they're not awful either. But they're efficient, like Stats Matt pointed out earlier. So many metrics we have to put in that dive farther than what the numbers show on the season. But I think that it's so paramount that you have to get the ground game going with this offense. This is going to be every week. You have to get the ground game going to an extent with the Colts, because until Richardson shows he can just take the offense, throw it on his shoulder, throw the ball more than 40 times and have over 60% completion when he throws it over 40 times, I think you have to get the ground game going. And you can't just lean on Anthony Richardson. You gotta lean on your highly paid running back in Jonathan Taylor. So I think that he's got to get the ball at least 20 times again. I think that you got to establish a rhythm with Jonathan Taylor, especially on the interior, because we know that he's going to be more explosive on the outside. Those linebackers and those defensive ends and pass rushers the Broncos have, they're no joke. So you're going to probably need to establish something on the interior. I think it's absolutely paramount, because if you are leaning on Anthony Richardson to do everything, again, even in the Jets game, I guess the Jets game, he did show he can do it, right? Because the ground game kind of suffered with Jonathan Taylor in that game too. But I just think this is a tougher task. I mean, that offense was, really picked up at the end of that game for the Jets, but I just think the Broncos are going to be consistently better than that. I don't think that you can just trust Anthony Richardson to lead you to the promised land all by himself in this one.
So in that last time we saw the Broncos on the field was against the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football, where they gave up 552 total yards to the Cleveland Browns. But Drake, only 77 of those 552 yards were on the ground. 23 rushing attempts for the Browns that night, only 3.3 yards per carry. Their leading rusher on the evening was actually Jerome Ford, who had 9 carries for 41 yards. Nick Chubb did not have very much success, 9 carries for 21 yards. So it has not been it hasn't been easy to run on this Broncos defense, certainly. So that's why the challenge is going to be there. And I think if the Colts are able to establish a rhythm early in the game with Jonathan Taylor or with Anthony Richardson in that quarterback run game, we know that that's going to be a part of this, because since Anthony Richardson returned from being benched, the Colts are averaging, I think it's eight different quarterback runs or quarterback design runs with Anthony Richardson. as opposed to 3 design quarterback runs before the benching. So having Anthony Richardson in that run game is going to be crucial, and it's going to keep the defense on their toes. Again, I get back to this where to help kind of alleviate the pass rush of the Cleveland Browns, because you have guys that are fantastic at getting after the quarterback. You know, Nick Batonio, or I'm sorry, Nick Bonito is having a breakout season with 11 sacks on the season. On the other side, you have Jonathan Cooper with 8. We talked about Zach Allen, who can create pressure up the middle. I think he's their third leading sacker with 5 sacks, let alone the 49 pressures that he has from the interior that Zach Stats Matt pointed out. So again, I think if the Colts really want to have success, it's about eliminating or fending off that pressure, making that defensive line, making those pass rushers second guess things. They can't just pin their ears back and go after Anthony Richardson. So there needs to be some misdirection. They need to get the ground game established. You need to use some quick game to neutralize that pass rush, because if you do, and then you can allow Anthony Richardson to get into a rhythm, you allow this offensive line to settle in and get into a rhythm, that's when I think you can start having success. But it's not going to happen if the run game doesn't have success early. You're not keeping this Broncos defense on their toes, and instead you're just trying to chuck the football down the field. So I think that part of the game plan is really, really going to be crucial if the Colts want to come out on top on Sunday.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, it's going to be all about Anthony Richardson's efficiency, right? Like the quarterback position is the most important, spot on the field for a reason. It's because there's so much riding on it and everything that the quarterback does. So Richardson's probably going to need to be over 50% to win this game. He's going to need to probably hover closer to 60% passing if he's going to win this game, because I'm sure the Broncos are going to do everything possible. Vance Joseph is not going to let Jonathan Taylor beat him. Okay. He's going to do everything he can to make Anthony Richardson do that. So Richardson might need to have some late game heroics in this one, but as long as the offense stays close to the Broncos and doesn't, have to get 10, 13, 14 points behind where Richardson's having to play catch up, I think that you're, looking at a good situation, at least in the fourth quarter.
I want to give a shout out to Matthew Sundberg for the first super chat of the evening. Matthew, thank you so much for all of your support. We really, really do appreciate it. Been a while on watching live. Love the work. Cheers. Well, Matthew, we can't say enough about you and all of our listeners here. So we really, really appreciate all of your support, and glad you could join us live since it has been a while. You'll love to see it. So Drake, when we talk about the Broncos defense, we always have to mention that guy in the secondary, who is arguably the best cornerback in the NFL. Most people, I think that, and that's Pat Surtain II. Pat Surtain II has been a perennial All-Pro for the past 3 seasons or so, 4-year NFL vet, and he has that rare ability to completely erase wide receivers in coverage. But outside of Pat Surtain, Drake, the Broncos don't they have Riley Moss is solid, but there's not anybody that you are ultimately too really scared of. So there's going to be opportunities to again take advantage of that, because Pat Surtain can't cover everybody all at once, certainly. So when you look at the secondary for the Broncos, you could be looking to attacking Jaquan McMillan as an option there. If Riley Moss isn't able to go, you're looking at Brandon Jones as a safety. He's certainly pretty good as far as he's leading or co-leading the team in tackles, but he isn't necessarily that coverage threat, So when you think about that, an NFL nerd asks, does Surtain follow receivers, or does he have a side of the field? Typically, Surtain stays on the side of the field, but the Broncos, he has followed receivers before, so it's kind of just depends. So to say if like Michael Pittman started really going off and he had over 100 yards in the first half, the Broncos could put him on Michael Pittman full time to try to eliminate that. But 2 weeks ago against the Cleveland Browns, even though Jerry Jeudy was dominating, they didn't have Patrick Surtain following Jeudy around the field. So Typically, they just keep Surtain on one side or the other. But Drake, when you look at this, like I said, Surtain can't cover everybody. Which wide receiver do you think will be the one that needs to step up in order for the Colts to get the victory on Sunday?
It's really easy to say Josh Downs, but I just don't know if he'll play at a full capacity, right? Like you just don't know what kind of snap count he's going to have. So instead, I will actually say, gosh, it's really difficult. It's like actually really hard. I'm sticking with Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce, I just feel like there's a couple big plays coming his way, even though Pat Surtain's phenomenal, right? A guy that is 6'3", 6'4", can run as fast as Pierce, can jump as high as Pierce, is as effective in a contested catch situation as Alec Pierce. That is a potential mismatch for everybody. Okay, so he does it better than, in my humble opinion, anybody in the NFL. Just throw up a ball and go get it at the highest point. Alec Pierce, I think, does it better than everyone, and he shows it with his average per catch. I mean, so I think that there's a couple big opportunities for him now. Is it going to come all? Is it going to have 5 or 6 catches? Probably not. We're talking more like 2 or 3 big impactful plays. But I just think that's kind of an X factor because, of course, Pittman's got to show up. Of course, A.D. Mitchell has to show up, and if Downs plays, he's going to be leaned on to some extent. But I'm just looking at Alec Pierce, man. I think he's got a big game ahead. So.
Alec Pierce certainly doesn't receive the volume that a Michael Pittman or a Josh Downs does, but this year, especially when he does get those targets, he's making the most of them. And while it may only be 2 or 3 a game, you're seeing Alec Pierce convert on most of those, if not all of those catches when his number is called. I hope the Colts do go to Alec Pierce a little bit sooner in the game, not necessarily wait until the fourth quarter. Sprinkle those targets out throughout the game, maybe and so that way you're not just force feeding him the football in the fourth quarter. And Drake, you have a point there. Alec Pierce could have some success, especially when you look at this stat from Stats Matt. The Broncos run predominantly single high coverage, and both Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell rank in the top 10 in separation for single high coverage. Those are your deep threats. While A.D. Mitchell hasn't been able to convert, we have seen his ability to create separation. It's just the end of the play that he needs to work on executing. But Alec Pierce, we've seen him do both, create a separation on those deep routes, especially against single high coverage, and be able to convert, be able to make those catches. So, like I said, I think the best game plan, Drake, for this Colts offense is to start with the quick game. And that's why I think the most impactful wide receiver will be Josh Downs, because I do think Josh Downs can be the one that really establishes the quick game. It'll be the safety blanket for Anthony Richardson. If the Broncos have a weakness in that secondary, it typically is in the nickel, where in the slot where Josh Downs is going to be lined up most of the time. So if you can lean on him and he can receive that high volume, make those catches down the field, that's going to bring that defense in. It's going to force a lot more single high coverage, and that's when you take those shots to Alec Pierce over the top. I think you're going to get your normal game out of Michael Pittman, probably 6, 7, 8 catches for 60, 70 yards or so. So he's gonna get his normal load. But I think if the Colts aren't able to lean on Josh Downs, and you don't see Josh Downs making those plays that we've been accustomed to over the past couple of seasons, I think it's going to be difficult for this Colts team to keep up, just because it's going to allow that pressure. It's going to allow the Broncos to really tee off on Anthony Richardson. And if he's not making those plays to his favorite target, then I think it's going to signal that this Colts offense is going to struggle.
Boy, wouldn't this be a great game, Andrew, for a tight end position?
Exactly.
Yeah, a little quick win right in the middle, just a little 5-yard boop right there. Right
nice Brock Bowers. Nice Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
we'll move on.
It's okay. Well, hey, you know what? I love that. If Josh Downs comes back to even an 80% snap count, 75% snap count compared to what he typically does, that's fantastic. I mean, you're talking about a guy who will help just get quick passes, and it's key to put yourself in like 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, second and 6 if possible, or less, because then you're opening up your playbook on second down for potentially third down as well. So those quick wins are going to be huge. I do expect Josh Downs to see the field. I do expect him to be back for this game. But yeah, it's going to be crucial for the wide receivers, because this is where you attack the Broncos defense, is through the air. That's just how it's going to happen more than likely. It's just a matter of taking care of the football. The best way to take care of the ball is to get rid of it quickly, let your quarterback get comfortable. Don't let him take too much pressure or hits, and get the ball out quickly so that it's completed, so that you can continue to put yourself in good situations.
Now let's switch gears here, Drake, because the Broncos have a very young quarterback of their own. He's not as young as Anthony Richardson, even though he is a rookie, but Bo Nix has been tearing it up there for the Denver Broncos, in the running, honestly, for Offensive Rookie of the Year, right up there with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. But Bo Nix, in his first 13 starts in the NFL, he's got 2,842 yards, 17 touchdowns with 8 interceptions, and he's completing his passes at a close to 64% rate. He also has 304 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. So he's already over 20 total touchdowns on the season. Been sacked only 19 times on the year, so a little bit more than once a game. Doesn't get sacked very often. Really, Bo Nix has been, particularly the last couple of months, really. It took a little bit to get him established early, but man, he has been cooking lately, and it's fueled this Broncos, this streak by the Broncos, and why they are one of the hotter teams in the NFL. It's because Bo Nix has been playing excellent football. So in order for the Colts to win on Sunday, Drake, I think Bo Nix is going to have to cool off at some point, and he's not going to cool off on his own. The Colts defense is going to have to make him cool off. So what do you think is going to be the best strategy for the Colts to slow down Bo Nix, or may at least make the rookie quarterback look like a rookie on Sunday?
Man, I think I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think contain. Because the thing is, he's really good at avoiding pressure, because he's deceivingly, freakishly fast. Like he runs like a 4.5 40-yard dash. He has like over 300 rushing yards on the season. He's kind of like Drake May, a little bit. You look at Drake May and you're like, passer. That's a passing quarterback, has some athleticism. Tell you, watch. Dude's really fast. Like Bo Nix will get out of that pocket, and he's out of there, and he's running down the field before you know it. I think that you gotta, like, I love this saying from Andrew. You gotta keep him in the well. But you also cannot allow this dude to sit back there and have a 75% completion percentage. He's got 277 completions for 2,842 passing yards. That says one thing to me: quick. All right, he's got quick passing all over. Sean Payton has him just humming. He's getting that ball out of the youngsters' hands quickly. You've got to play more efficient coverage at the point of attack. I think that Gus Bradley's going to need to instill a little bit more press, because they don't really have anyone outside of Cortland Sutton. Okay, I mean, they really don't. I'm not saying that they can't make other players with guys like Marvin Mims, who had like a 90-plus yard touchdown. I think it was against the Browns. Mm-hmm. Clearly, they've got playmakers, but it's a lot of Cortland Sutton. Okay, so I think if you can force him to maybe go to somebody else, force him to just think a little bit longer than he normally has to, maybe then you're forcing him to run out of the pocket. Maybe then you're in a situation where you can maybe get him on the ground and sack him, because clearly he doesn't get taken down very often. So it's about taking away that quick passing game to an extent, because it's going to be there. You're not going to be able to remove it. And also keeping him in the well. Make him throw the ball. Don't just let him, get the ball out within 1 or 2 seconds. He needs to think. Make him think.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to show just how hot of a streak Bo Nix has been on. Another Stats Matt stat of the day presented by Busch Light. Since week 5, Bo Nix has the second most games with 2+ touchdown passes and 0 interceptions, with 5 such games, only behind Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson is in the top 5 of the MVP conversation. So that just kind of shows you that the hot streak that Bo Nix has been on. And he's been getting those plays in chunks, Drake. If you look here, since week 5, Bo Nix on downfield passes, which is 10+ yards or more, has the 11th highest yards per attempt at 11.3, with the 8th best passer rating at 109.7. So he's been getting it in chunks. But honestly, Drake, this is where I think the Colts can actually take advantage, and this is where I think the Colts actually could could kind of make Bo Nix or challenge Bo Nix on this, because what does Gus Bradley like to do? He likes to play that off coverage. He likes to the Colts. The entire Colts defense is predicated on not allowing explosive plays. Now the Colts have to execute that. Right, it's not just a given that they're not going to give up any explosive plays, but ideally, yes, they need to tackle. They need to make sure there isn't lapses in coverage. But ideally, this is what this defense is set up to do: make quarterbacks dink and dunk down the field, and not get those explosive plays. And honestly, Bo Nix, he's got some gunslinger in him. I was talking to Stats Matt about this before the show. He's got some gunslinger in him where he likes to take chances, as you saw. He, in that game against the Browns, on that play that you were talking about where he threw it to Marvin Mims, he ripped that ball down the seam, and it was a beautiful throw right into the hands of Marvin Mims, who took it 90 plus yards for a touchdown. I mean, you couldn't have handed it off better than what Bo Nix did to Marvin Mims. However, he's going to want to take those shot plays. So I think this is where the cat and mouse game between Sean Payton, Gus Bradley, and Bo Nix is going to take place. I really do think that Gus Bradley is going to say, you look at Bo Nix and say, you're a rookie. We're going to test your patience. We're going to make you take the easy completions down the field. And if you're going to try to take those shot plays, we're going to make you pay. Again, will the Colts be able to actually execute on that? It remains to be seen. That's going to be the big question on Sunday. But if they can execute on that, Drake, Bo Nix could potentially have the opportunity, while he's been hot and he's been taking care of the football, there could be opportunities for those interceptions and for turnovers. And while I said the Broncos turn the ball over or force turnovers at a high rate, 8th highest in the NFL, they're tied with the Colts. The Colts actually have the 8th most forced turnovers in the NFL this season. So I think one of the keys to this game, and if the Colts do come out on top, we're likely seeing a couple of turnovers by Bo Nix, whether it is, a fumble or a sack fumble by Latu. But I'm more interested in seeing, him throwing an interception, whether it is down the seam, he gets a little greedy and Kenny Moore's able to pick it off, or if he tries to throw it deep and we see Julian Blackmon come over and get the interception, whatever. It wouldn't surprise me that if the Colts do end up with the victory on Sunday, you look over and there's at least one turnover in the box score for Bo Nix.
I mean, when you're facing a rookie quarterback, you're hoping that your defense at all times, every time, can force at least a turnover. I will say that while on paper, being a patient defense with a quick passing, opposition that you're facing, it looks bad. You're also, I love that point that you put out there, because I didn't even realize this, is like, at some point, Bo Nix, kind of like you said, he's going to want to say, okay, I've completed 4 or 5 passes of 5 yards. It's time for me to take a 40-yard shot, and the Colts will just be like, well, this is exactly what we've been waiting for. So it'll be interesting. Like you said, it's going to be a chess match. I cannot wait to see Sean Payton versus Gus Bradley. I know Gus Bradley has underwhelmed at times, but he is also very, very experienced, and he's faced Sean Payton before. So I think he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. Will those tricks work? We'll see.
But the Colts do need to get pressure on Bo Nix, because if you just let him sit back there in the pocket, then I don't think it's going to be a very good game for this Colts defense. And that's Stats Matt, another great stat. Here we go. Bo Nix versus pressure is actually 8th best in pressure to sack ratio. So that means he gets out of sacks quite often, but he loses 26.5% completion percentage when pressured. Pro Football Focus grade drops from 12th in the NFL when clean to 34th in the NFL when pressured. However, the Broncos only allow the fourth lowest pressure rate. So he doesn't get pressured very often, Drake. However, when he does get pressured, it's quite a bit of a difference between the Bo Nix that doesn't get pressured. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier is, keeping him in the well, don't allowing him to extend those plays where he can rifle it down the field. But I also think that the Colts need to get quick pressure on him too. You can't just let him sit back there with the football. So I'm looking at guys like Latu, who's going to be lined up a lot of times on Garrett Bowles. I'm looking at guys like Kwity Paye, who is going to be lined up. I think their right tackle. Is it Mark McGlinchey? No, is it McGlinchey? I'm not certain on that who their right tackle is, but he's going to need to get that pressure on the quarterback as well. You're going to need to see it is Mike McGlinchey from formerly of University of Notre Dame, but you're going to need to get those guys need pressure. Buckner. DeForest Buckner with a week to kind of sit, a week to get healthier for DeForest Buckner. He needs to bring the pressure. Dio Odangbo, it needs to be a full-on assault of this defensive line on Bo Nix, because if you sit back there and let him just throw the football, I do think that he's going to have success.
Yeah, and we just saw it with Drake May, okay, and an offense that's just not good.
Very true.
Not good. And Demario Douglas was basically taken out of the game by Kenny Moore, okay, and he still just diced him up. So the tight ends kicked the Colts right in the teeth in that last game. The Broncos kind of are in the similar situation as the Colts. I mean, I'm looking right here. I'm not seeing really much of a tight end. I mean, that Troutman, Kroll, Atkins, you got – they kind of have a similar tight end situation to the Colts. So I think that, it's going to be all on, the wide receivers to help Bo Nix for the most part with his passing attack. So good Lord, if you can get Leatu Latu pursuing Nix constantly, guys like Kwity Paye, who's, by the way, leading the Colts in sacks, I think that you could have some success. And again, yes, he does escape pressure. He does run really well. But it's different when you're running and getting away from pressure, and then you progress for yards, and when you're running for your life, like Anthony Richardson was against the Detroit Lions. If you can kind of have that wave of pressure where it just all comes at you at once, I mean, a rookie quarterback's going to throw you some gimme balls.
Yeah, exactly. And Drake, you talked about it, that the Broncos really don't have too many high profile options outside of Courtland Sutton. Now, Courtland Sutton has been on a tear recently, especially since I think it's since week 8 is when his numbers have just absolutely skyrocketed.
Saying on my fantasy team.
Yeah. 63 catches for 746 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. When you look at the Broncos offense, Drake, the next closest wide receiver, it's 700 or 846 yards receiving, not 700. When you look at the next closest receiver in terms of yards, it's Devon Vele with 377. So, and Courtland Sutton actually has close to it's actually 25 more catches than the next closest player on the Broncos, and that's running back Javonte Williams with 38. Devon Vele has 33 catches, so 30 more than the next closest receiver. So Drake, right there, you want to slow down Bo Nix, you got to take away Courtland Sutton. Now, we know the Colts aren't going to have anybody follow Courtland Sutton around the field. The Colts are probably hardly going to play man defense on Courtland Sutton. But what you need to do is you need to not allow Courtland Sutton to take over the football game. What we saw against the Jets, where Devontae Adams wasn't able to take over the football game, where Garrett Wilson wasn't able to take over the football game. That's what you need to see from this Colts defense. You can't let Courtland Sutton go out there, get 10, 11 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown or two. Because if that happens, you're probably looking at a loss for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think that one of the big keys in this game again, and one of the things that will help limit the impact that Bo Nix has on this game, is you can't let Courtland Sutton run out there and get free. And that's including if you have 3rd and long and you let Courtland Sutton just find the hole in the defense, be able to catch the ball, run upfield and get that first down. It's really much of the attention should be on Courtland Sutton in the secondary for the Colts for most of this game.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty interesting here. So Sutton accounts for 104 out of Bo Nix's 434 pass attempts. That's basically like 25%. He accounts for 63 of Bo Nix's 277 completions. It's about 20 to 25%. He has 59 more targets than Vele behind him. Courtland Sutton is the passing offense, ladies and gentlemen. This dude, and it just shows how damn good he is because no offense to the rest of those guys, none of them are really close to what Cortland Sutton can do. So if you can remove Cortland Sutton, if you can look at number 14 and you can make him an absolute priority, maybe even do layered coverage where once he gets by one guy, he's got to deal with another guy like down the field, is something to take him away, force Bo Nix to go to someone else. Because even though Marvin Mims was the guy to catch that huge touchdown, it accounted for, it looks like, about a third of his yardage on the season.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy when you think about just the raw
guy has like
numbers
180
there.
yards without that.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can stop Cortland Sutton, or at least contain Cortland Sutton, that goes a long way to containing this Broncos offense, especially when you look at their run game, Drake. Because when you look at the run game for the Broncos, it's not very impressive. You know, they're 20th in the NFL in rushing. They get about 111 yards per game. Both Javonte Williams. And if you look at there are two running backs, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Both of those guys are under 500 yards on the season. It's truly a running back by committee. 446 yards for Williams, McLaughlin with 367. And remember, Bo Nix himself has 304 yards. So he's not far behind his running backs in terms of that yardage. Now, you look at Javonte Williams has 4 touchdowns. McLaughlin only has 1. They really don't combine for a lot of yardage per game, you know. So when you're looking at that, and even Audric Estime gets in there, but he only has 191 yards on the season. So it is truly a running back by committee with this group. And Drake, because there isn't a guy that you're really too afraid of, I think that this Colts team can take some risks in that regard. You know, really trying to focus the pressure on Bo Nix. But again, it's going to come down to execution. If you're going to do that, you got to have Grover Stewart clogging up the middle. Raekwon Davis must be better. You get to the second level, you can't have Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, Nick Cross, your highest, you know, volume tacklers. They can't be missing tackles. They need to bring that running back stable down. But when you're looking at this Broncos offense, the running game certainly does not strike fear into anyone's eyes. And I think that's definitely good news for this Colts defense, who's certainly struggled against the run pretty much all season long.
Yeah, I mean, most of it's the quick passing game, and it really shows. It's a testament to Sean Payton as an offensive mind, really, because this Broncos team, I don't want to say this, but they don't really have like massive talent on offense. They just don't. They don't really have a tight end. They don't have anyone outside of Cortland Sutton. Their running back committee is not that impressive. It just isn't. Okay, they have a rookie freaking quarterback, and they're 8-5. Sean Payton is just a great play caller. I mean, he understands offense very well and knows the quarterback position. But you've got a guy in Javonte Williams who is averaging 3.6 yards a carry. Jaleel McLaughlin has 4.6. Audric Estime leads with 4.7 yards per carry. But like you mentioned, I mean, you're looking at 34 yards a game from Javonte Williams, about 28 from Jaleel McLaughlin, about 21 from Audric Estime, from 23 from Bo Nix. I mean, they're getting a compilation. It's like a little mishmash of rushing yards. So they don't really have a dedicated playmaker in the ground game. So I think if you can take away the ground attack and you can put it all on Bo Nix, I mean, Sean Payton's offense is predicated more on the passing attack, setting up the ground game, if anything. But man, I think that gives you a better chance for success, because a best friend for a rookie quarterback is to hand the ball off, and they haven't really ran the ball that effectively. So this could be a way more interesting defensive matchup for the Colts now looking at this than originally thought, especially with that running back situation. These guys aren't out there kicking too much ass. So
yeah, and the thing is, though, the Colts also can't just completely dismiss the running game,
because they can't defend the run.
Exactly, and that's how you see, them. They only average 111 yards total per game. Then this could be the get right game for the rushing attack for the Broncos. So yeah, the Colts still need to execute, and while this Broncos rushing attack isn't a strength of this offense, the Colts can't let it be a strength on Sunday. Let's get to our X factor factors, Drake, because I do think that this game is going to be very close. This game is going to be a very physical game, and it's going to come down to execution, and it's going to come down to which team can make the least amount of mistakes. I really think so. So that being said, who do you think who is going to be your X factor for this matchup between the Colts and the Broncos?
I'm going to go with outside corners.
Okay.
Outside cornerbacks. I'm going to say guys like Sam Womack. I'm going to say guys like Jalen Jones. They're going to see the most of Cortland Sutton. That is the piece to their offense. That is the guy. That's the dude. That's their X factor. Every single game is Cortland Sutton. I think if you can take him away, you force Bo Nix to go to other options. Keep Sutton 4 or 5 catches. That's not too bad as long as he's not making big plays downfield. I think that the outside corners are big for me.
I can see that. I think that because if you want to eliminate Cortland Sutton from the passing game, those guys have to be on their P's and Q's. For me, I'm going with the Colts offensive line. You can't just pick one of those guys because they go as a unit. I'm not worried about Bernard Ryman. I'm not worried about Quentin Nelson. I do worry a little bit about Ryan Kelly. You worry about Mark Lewinsky just because you don't know what if because he hasn't played much this year, and then Matt Gonzalez. I trust Matt Gonzalez, but he is still a rookie. And when you're going up against the likes of Benito and Jonathan Cooper, they can certainly get the best of you. This Colts offensive line has to be dominant on Sunday. Both in the running game and in the passing game. Have to create those holes for Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. Have to dominate up front, set the tone, and you have to be staunch in your pass protection. You cannot let these guys get after Anthony Richardson, pressure Anthony Richardson, and then this offense starts getting into those second and long, third and long. You can't have holding penalties that stall out drives. This Colts offensive line has to be at their best, because if they get too far behind, then Anthony Richardson's more than likely going to have to press, and that's where you can start leading to some unforced errors by this Colts offense. The offensive line has been paid like a strength of this team, especially if you're getting back Ryan Kelly, who needs to be playing like a Pro Bowl center again. The offensive line, the Colts are going to go as far as the offensive line takes them on Sunday. Stats Matt says his X factor is Alec Pierce. If he can open things up and make the Broncos play too high, it definitely changes things. Shane Gregory says the X factor is Richardson's legs. Don't doubt that there. That's certainly, if he can get the things going and help that run game, that will open things up, especially if Jonathan Taylor isn't having a very good game. Sean Contright says the linebackers certainly could see that, especially if
LOL.
Yeah, especially if you see Bo Nix attacking the middle of the field. That's a good one as well. We've got Kent saying the X factor is Gus Bradley's scheme. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Gus Bradley, the game plan that this defense uses against Bo Nix. Certainly. All right, Drake. Colts Broncos at Empower Field at Mile High on Sunday. 4:25 Eastern kickoff. This very well could decide the 7th seed. So who do you got? Are the Colts going to be able to come in and pull off the upset, or do the Broncos put the final nail in the coffin for this Colts team?
The answer is yes. The Colts are going to pull off the upset because they are that team that is going to play up to their competition. At some point in this stretch, they'll lose to one of these teams after the Broncos. That's my prediction. I won't go into what it is. Or which team it is, but I do think they're going to win this game. I think that it's really weird. It's hard for me to like explain why, but there's going to come a point late in the game, in my opinion, where Anthony Richardson is going to be that X factor again. He's going to be that guy that's going to be really difficult after you've been dealing with a guy for 60 minutes. Sorry, my cam just went out. You've been dealing with a guy for 60 minutes and basically at the end of the day, he's, got the ball in the fourth quarter. I just think that Anthony Richardson's going to be able to make it happen, but I think it's going to be Matt Gay that's going to hit the game winner. Give me the Colts 28-27.
28-27. Okay, calling a close one there. So as Drake fixes his camera, let's take a look at what the chat is saying. Stats Matt gonna be a homer here. 24-21 Colts. We also have Tressa saying Colts win 13-10. So Tressa's going a low scoring affair, kind of like the last time these two teams squared off on Thursday Night Football.
Hopefully, it's not as ugly.
We have Enna. Yeah, I hope not. My goodness. We've got NFL Nerd is going with the Broncos 28-21 Broncos. Nathan going 17-14 Colts win. And then Stats Matt, I want to know how we get to 28 with a field goal, Drake. So
sorry, I was a little bit distracted by my
we'll say 27.
I'll say 30-27.
Yeah, there you go. 30-27. And then Sean Cotright goes 27-24 Colts. Well, guys, it looks like it's going to be me and NFL Nerd all alone on this island. I do think the Broncos are going to pull this one off. I do think it's going to be close. I don't think that the Colts are going to. I don't think the Colts are going to necessarily be blown out of the building, but I'm just unsure if this Colts team is going to be able to stop. This Colts defense is going to be able to stop Bo Nix at the end. I do have faith in Anthony Richardson. I have faith in Jonathan Taylor, but I'm not sure if this Colts defense is going to be able to hold up. So I'm going to go again on a little bit of. I think that this over under at about 44. I think that's going to be a push. I also think that the Colts are going to push this one as well. I'm going to go Broncos 24, Colts 20. So I think that the Colts could have that lead at 20-17, and then you see an end of game drive by Bo Nix that ends up getting them the victory. I hope I'm wrong on this one, because I would love to see the Colts pull off the upset against the Broncos at Mile High. Be much more fun to talk about afterwards. But I do think that the Broncos are going to get this one, unfortunately, and that's going to make things very, very difficult for the Colts to make the postseason. And then we've got Shane Gregory saying 35-17.
Whoa.
Colts. So he's expecting a blowout there, but it's going to be a very interesting game on Sunday. Drake, let's take a look at the Colts injury report. It's honestly some really good news on the injury report for the Colts this week. Let's bring that up here. So guys that haven't practiced all week, Ashton Doolin's still dealing with that ankle injury from before the bye week. And then Braden Smith is out with a personal matter. Honestly, guys, not exactly sure what that is. Not going to speculate what that personal matter is either. But he will not play this weekend against the Denver Broncos. Shane Steichen did not commit to Braden Smith even returning this year. But whatever it is, I think we're all in agreement that we hope that everything is okay with Braden Smith. We hope everything turns out okay, whatever he's dealing with. And we hope he comes back as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, Braden Smith, he doesn't have a Pro Bowl, doesn't have an All-Pro, doesn't have a lot of, NFL accolades, but Colts fans know, and we know just how much of a stalwart he is on that right side.
Exactly. Now, guys that have been full in practice, it's a very good list. Michael Pittman with the back, still full. Jalen Carlisle, who's been designated to return from IR. There's your coverage linebacker, Drake. And Carlisle was playing very good football before he got hurt. He's been full participant all week. Expect Carlisle to make his return on Sunday. DeForest Buckner, the bye week did DeForest Buckner some good. He's been a full participant all week. Tanner Bortolini has cleared concussion protocol. He'll be good to go. And then Ryan Kelly has also been designated to return from injured reserve. He's been a limited participant all week with that knee injury. So his status is still up in the air for Sunday, I should say. If I had to guess, Drake, I would say that Ryan Kelly does play. And when Ryan Kelly comes back, Shane Steichen already said he's going to be the team's starting center. There isn't a competition between Kelly and Bortolini right now. But if Kelly can't go, and if he needs another week to feel 100% before he can go out there, Drake, I think you're in agreement with me here. Full confidence in Tanner Bortolini because he's been playing excellent football at the center position.
IQ's great. Yeah, his athleticism's great. I mean, his fundamentals look good. I mean, obviously, in a situation where playoffs are on the line, I will say you probably prefer a team captain who has multiple Pro Bowls like Ryan Kelly, even if he hasn't been playing like he did last year. But yes, I think that Tanner Bortolini has at the least giving you confidence in the future of the center position post Ryan Kelly.
Yeah, getting Josh Downs back is huge. Going from a
Huge, yeah.
limited participant to a full participant, Josh Downs is on track to play. That is going to be massive, not only for Anthony Richardson, but just the offense as a whole, because this offense is much, much better when you have Josh Downs out there. So really the one to watch is Ryan Kelly for Sunday. But if Ryan Kelly can't go, like we said, it will be Tanner Bortolini that starts at center for the Colts. Drake, let's take a look at the latest Colts news and rumors, and we've got some good news to share about this Colts team, in particular with two of the most respected veterans on this team. We'll start out with Kenny Moore II. Kenny Moore II was named the Colts nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Most in the NFL say that this award is the most prestigious award that you can receive in the NFL, more prestigious than an MVP, Super Bowl MVP, because the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, you have to both have excellence on the field as well as off the field. Kenny Moore, it's his second time being nominated for Walter Payton Man of the Year award with the Colts. Not a more deserving human being than Kenny Moore to get this nomination from Indy.
Yeah, and look, the fact that Kenny Moore got it just makes perfect sense. I mean, he's an absolute menace in the local community in the best way possible. loves Indianapolis, loves Circle City. They love him back. And then, of course, he's just an absolute undisputed leader in the locker room for the Colts. Like you said, just cannot think of a more deserving guy to get that nomination.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Well said. DeForest Buckner also getting his accolades. Buckner was named the recipient of the Ed Block Courage Award. This award is voted on by the players, and it's given to the player that shows fantastic, play on the field, tremendous leadership in the locker room, courage and determination. Really, just embodies what it means to be a Colt. And DeForest Buckner was nominated by his teammates again. One of those guys that when you think of the Ed Block Courage Award for the Colts, you automatically think of DeForest Buckner. I think Buckner has won this award a couple of times now. And again, it's voted on by his peers. So another tremendous honor for one of the best on the Colts.
Yeah, and he does a whole bunch of charity work, right? He does a whole bunch of fundraising work, but he also gets this award because he literally will play through broken bones and
exactly.
It doesn't matter what Buckner has, he will just play through it. So what a tough SOB. Could not also think of a more deserving guy for that award than DeForest Buckner.
I think the three toughest guys on the Colts is DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman Jr., and Quentin Nelson. All three of those guys, just the epitome of toughness. Then some practice squad moves. The Colts did sign defensive tackle Fladarius Payne to the practice squad, and they placed defensive tackle Tristan Hill on the practice squad injured list. But Drake, all eyes are on this game in Denver. Colts Broncos, like I said, for that 7th seed in the AFC. Now, if the Colts win, doesn't automatically put them in the 7th seed, and the Broncos still do need to lose one more game than the Colts the rest of the way, but it would give them the tiebreaker over the Broncos. And when you look at the Broncos' upcoming schedule, Drake, I mean, it is a tough one. You're looking at games against, I'm going to pull it up here, but you're looking at games against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they have to play the Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah. So after the Colts, they play the Chargers. Then they play the Chargers in LA. Then they play the Bengals, who, while they don't have the best record, the Bengals offense is still very, very good with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the like. They go to Cincinnati to play the Bengals, and then they host the Kansas City Chiefs in week 18 of the season. So, some really big games, and the Chargers aren't going to back down. The Bengals aren't going to back down. We'll see if the Chiefs are resting their starters in week 18. But the door would be open for the Indianapolis Colts. And that's why Anthony Richardson said, this is basically a playoff game, and all of the games from here on out are basically playoff games. I think the Colts are going to be prepared. We'll just have to see if they go out there and they're able to execute on Sunday.
Every game is a playoff game, but this one holds the most weight. They need to win this game or else their chances go through the tank, and they need basically godlike miracles to happen if they lose this game to make the playoffs. So everything rides on this one.
It's gonna be a wild time on Sunday, that's for sure. And that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk Colts Broncos with us. Get us set for this massive game on Sunday. It's going to be a playoff atmosphere at Empower Field, that's for sure. I want to give a shout out to Matthew Sundberg for the super chat this evening. We really appreciate you, brother, and appreciate everyone else that joined us to talk Colts football once again. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell, turn on the notifications. You never want to miss us. And then if you can't catch us live, wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, I know you've got plenty out there on horseshoehuddle.com. Tell the people what they need to go check out before Sunday's game.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff on Anthony Richardson and Broncos, but I'm going to be releasing my 5 keys to a Colts victory. I'm also going to be releasing the 3 biggest threats to Anthony Richardson, as well as another piece detailing why this victory would be the biggest for both Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson to this point in each of their careers. So go check those out.
A lot of stuff to read on the site. For myself, dove into what Anthony Richardson had to say in his preparation before this game. It was literally the first day of the bye week. He hits up Shane Steichen and asks, "What do you have on Denver?" Richardson is preparing for almost 2 weeks for this game. He's going to be ready on Sunday. And also, you're going to hear from the defensive leaders from the Indianapolis Colts as they prepare to go against Bo Nix. So make sure you check that out, as well as everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And we'll be back on Monday night to talk through this big game between the Colts and the Broncos and dissect everything that happened on Sunday afternoon. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you right back here to talk you through everything that happened from Colts Broncos at Mile High Field.